All right. It appears I'm a little bit late. I tried this video about 10 a.m. this morning, but I haven't been feeling well today. But, housing and seniors and veterans and those that are disabled, it's a serious matter. And I wouldn't care if I had pneumonia. If it meant getting out the bed, I'd still be here to try to answer questions. So today's video is going to be more geared towards those of you that are 55 years and older, but there's plenty of lessons that can be kind of glean from this. So today we're going to talk about three different tiers of housing and how you might approach this if you're 55 and older and those that are 62 and older. It's more or less known as Title 24, and under there they have subsections like Section 202, Seniors with Disabilities, Mainstream Vouchers for those of you without disabilities, and in consideration of it not being a voucher, the other options are subsidies, which is under the LITCH program, or LITCH, which is more or less the subsidies. Subsidies known as affordable housing, low-income housing, and many other names. But, just because a property markets itself as a senior's property doesn't necessarily mean that it's being subsidized by the U.S. government. So always be sure before you apply. The main thing the video is going to be about is education through questions. You guys are here to ask your questions, and by virtue of that, I'm hoping to do a little bit of teaching here today. So before we get started, my name is Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I'm probably one of the most widely known consultants, internet, Google, and otherwise, in terms of Section 8 housing and federal programs. Speaking for about 15 years, career spanning 24 years. Deal with lots of law firms, lots of legal aid societies, caseworkers, counselors, shelters. It's pretty endless. When I'm not doing that, then doing commentary, I guess, for magazines and newspapers that have an interest in the subject matter. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say a few hellos. Christy O, how long does it usually take to port to another city within your state? Well, there's a couple of things you have to keep in consideration for portabilities and moves. If you did your pre-planning, which means you're aware of where you're wanting to go, and you have reached out to that forwarding housing authority. So as an example, I'm going to use the state of Florida and the state of Texas as an example, even though it's not county to county as you're requesting. If you have put in notice with your worker suggesting that you're preparing for portability and all the right parts are in place, then I would advise in most cases you would be able to get approval within 30 days. Now, that's presuming you know everything about portability. When I look at portability as a whole and look at it within the system itself, Section 8 system, and all its federal rules, it's probably one of the easier things you can do, but it's also kind of a gamble. So I'm going to cover portability a little bit, and I'm going to say a few highs and hellos while we're doing this. Shirley Griffin, thank you for sharing today. And Hot Sugar says hi. Emma Johnson says, what states? Well, Emma, could you elaborate a little bit more on the context of what you're asking so I can help you out? Grizzle Kemble, I want to port. Well, it looks like YouTube retracted your comment. I don't know why. It's certainly not me. Grizzle, change the wording. Sometimes Google's algorithm may not like a word you're using, even though it's not offensive. So just rewrite it in a different way or misspell it. Should come back through, okay? So let's talk about portability, since that's a topic matter for right now. You're putting in you're first establishing whether or not the housing let's actually start at the very beginning. If you've had your voucher about 12 months, then you're guaranteed that right. Now, obviously there are other circumstances where you can port in under 12 months. I'm not going to get into all of that. But if you have reached out to the forwarding housing authority where you're going and they will allow billing or absorbing, then I would advise notifying your PHA worker or portability specialist at your local housing authority that you have an intention to potentially move your voucher, which is called portabilities and moves. Once you do that, then if you're all packed, you have the money to move and so on, then I would advise, they were probably going to advise you to give a 30-day notice to vacate for the landlord. Now, that's barring that you're good on all payments, fees, and you've not violated your HAP contract. And from there, you would make your transition. Now, on some occasions, a housing authority that you may want to go to may deny that request if they don't have the funds to pick up another voucher from out of state. And let me dispel a few rumors about portability. When you move a voucher from one place to another, whether it's one county to another or one state from another, you do not arrive in that state and get another waiting list. You're automatically issued a voucher recalculated for the local community, which means the new place you are, and then you go out and begin your housing search immediately. You don't enter another waiting list. Okay, guys? All right, moving back to comments. Nikki McClever, hi from Maryland. Oh, Maryland. Maryland's always on my list. I tell you what, we get a lot of folks out of Maryland, a top 4 state in terms of number of clients we have. And I deal with roughly, I don't know, at this point around 1,200 a year was the number of calls. And to be honest with you, this from spring to summer, I had a lot more calls than I normally like to have. All right, so Sally Richard, hello and good afternoon. And Chrissy Oak says, thank you. So let's go back to some basics for those of you that are 55 and above and 62 and older. So we're going to frame up the idea of housing vouchers and subsidies as 3 avenues. Number 1, you're reaching out to your local housing authority and you're applying for an open waiting list. You have a duration time that you're probably going to have to wait. And if the circumstances are right and you match the preferences they're looking for. And what I mean by preferences, whether or not you're a senior, you're disabled, veteran, and many other factors they consider. That changes dramatically from one county to the next. It just depends on how they prioritize their money. All those things provided, you were granted a voucher and then approved if everything on your application was truthful. Now, that's avenue number 1. There's actually a second avenue that you can pursue within the housing authority. It's called project-based housing. So the voucher allows you, and the reason they call it a mainstream voucher or a housing choice voucher is because that gives you the choice to go to a private landlord and rent on your own. When the housing authority offers you PBS or project-based housing, PBH, that means the housing authority is not only in control of your voucher, but they also are the ones that own and manage the property, which is usually a terrible idea. We've had lots of examples in the past 50 years what happens when you give both the housing authority control over a voucher plus the place you live. It makes it nearly impossible to complain about anything, right? And so the behaviors become a little bit tougher to deal with. Besides that, some of the characters that tend to live in project-based housing can make it a rather egregious situation. So I don't recommend it for anybody, especially seniors or those that are disabled. So those 2 options for the PHA or Public Housing Authority locally for the voucher. Now we're going to step into a different arena. This is where private landlords don't want to accept the voucher, but instead get an agreement through the LITCH or federally subsidized program. The landlord goes, hey, you know what? I've got a building. There's 200 units. I'd like to allocate roughly 100 of those 200 units. I'll make them available to low-income individuals. No other preferences or requirements will be in place. If you're low income and you meet that criteria along with the normal things you need to meet in order to live in the property, then you're granted a subsidy. Now, subsidies aren't like vouchers. Subsidies means that the landlord's in an agreement with HUD, and for a duration of period of time, they'll receive tax credits on the property where they can write off a lot of their taxes, and in turn, they offer these units at a discount. But the subsidies, when you move in apartment A1 or A2 or A3, you become subsidized. But here's the tough part about that. Once you're in the property and say you decide you don't like Sally and her screaming children and Bob and all the noise he makes at night, you want to move, then you start this whole ridiculous process again. Okay. So that means you're moving out. You no longer have a subsidy. That subsidy won't move from one place to another. So you enter the market again blindly. And if you don't have a place to go, then you can burn money at the hotel and you get storage fees and everything else until whenever you're able to find another subsidy or you enter the housing voucher market, the public housing authority, to see what you can get there. And that could turn out to be, months or even years and even decades. So subsidies are, in my mind, good for people that are elderly. And my opinion of elderly does change quite significantly as I get older. But I'll tell you this, probably anybody that's in their 80s that doesn't have good mobility. There's plenty of people in their 80s and 90s that do really well. They don't need anybody's help. My grandfather was one of them. He was good till he was 95, and one day, bam, he's gone. So not everybody needs a nursing home and aid, So I would say 80 and above. If you're not planning on moving anywhere else and you're fairly confident the property, the subsidy you're going to move into will be a good arrangement, then you can stay there. Okay. So that's all subsidies are good for. There is no preferentials to it. There's no special treatment. They don't care if you're disabled and other things. It's simply you're either low income or you're not. And that's it. The good news is under Section 811. Now, the interesting thing is IRS has tax code and rules and federal rules, what they call federal code of federal regulation. HUD also writes their rules and laws just like they do, like the IRS does. So it's very similar, but these are not, they're separate things in terms of law. But under subsection 811 of Title 24 allows for two programs, Section 202, seniors with disabilities, and Section 811 for those that are not seniors. In other words, those that are 18 to 61. So, now we see vouchers, we see project-based housing, and we see what subsidies are. And I'm not going to convolute this with extreme definitions because we'll all get lost in it. Third option. So we've considered those three options so far. And the fourth and final option you really have on the market is going to be Continuum of care, and that addresses all individuals that would likely meet one of three criteria to start. Okay, and this is a starting point, not an ending point. Number one, you're homeless, literally in the car, in the woods, in the forest. So be it. Number two, you're reaching the point of homelessness because you can't afford rent. Number three, you're on notice. You're being put out. You're being evicted, and so on. Number four, domestic violence victim, being trafficked and other things, imminent threat to your life, being stalked. And so you're being left. Sometimes you may be living with the aggressor and you're forced to live in a car because you can't deal with while they're drunk and they're tearing up the house. So you're forced to literally live in your car while they're sleeping inside drunk. So there are lots of circumstances. But the main thing about Continuum of Care is it opens up an additional three programs. Now, many of you heard emergency housing vouchers, okay? So that's number one. And there are two different levels of that. There's the pandemic level ones that lasted only during the pandemic. There were 70,000. And then there's emergency housing vouchers that are a special use voucher. Special use vouchers are vouchers that are rarely talked about in policy procedures, data manuals, and other administrative plans for public housing authorities. So these are issued on a case-by-case basis and usually don't come with portability. But needless to say, also that because you hear the word emergency does not also either imply that you're going to get this quickly. It just means that it's addressing an emergency situation. It doesn't mean they're going to dash themselves to the printer and give you one, okay? So you would have to meet the criteria. They would have to have the funding. And then, of course, if you meet the qualifications and they want to give it to you, then at that point you get it, okay? So that's number one. And then number two under Continuum of Care program would be, I'll tell you what, trying to keep all this in my head. Number two would be not project-based. I hate when this happens. See, when you get old, you get those air gaps in your head. Well, let's move on to number three. If I remember what number two in a minute, if it comes back to me, I'll let you guys know. So rapid rehousing would be a good solution, but it's not usually good for seniors and those on fixed incomes. Rapid rehousing is more of a circumstance where they can cover your rent for a situation you already have for about 3 months up to 2 years. It's help you get back on your feet. So it's not really that great for seniors, but in a crunch, if you just needed that funding to pay rent or to utilize an apartment on short term, it could be used that way. Now, permanent supportive housing. There we go. I finally recoded. I should know it after speaking on that for 20 years. So permanent supportive housing can address a wide range of issues. And of course, it has its own federal definitions. But broadly speaking, permanent supportive housing is addressing you receiving funding so you can go out there and get supportive housing. And it comes in two parts. One, it's addressing rent and a place to live, but it also offers something on the side that you may accept or deny, and that's the supportive part. If they offer Meals on Wheels, if they offer a care aide that comes in and helps you a couple of hours a day, You can accept or deny that, or even if they want to offer you counseling and casework or job services. So it's kind of like supportive services all wrapped around. And that could be a benefit to some of you that are seniors that can't do everything. Every little bit matters in terms of time and money. And so permanent supportive housing could work out. It's often used for those that have tougher situations with mental health, okay? But it's not exclusive to that. So that's the fourth tier of all this. It's continuum of care and its three sub programs: emergency housing voucher, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. And guess who I hear while I'm making this video right now? I hear my cat Bunny. Now, many of you know I rescue cats and have for a long time. And I hear him crying right now. It's a little heartbreaking. By the way, he's not a little kitten anymore. He's all grown up, but he knows how to hit the perfect tone when I'm in bed or when I'm on a video to really get my attention. He's still crying. He's like a small kitten. And he knows what he's doing. He's working me. All right, guys, I'm going to address some comments here. So now we have a baseline for understanding that these are all these different things. Subsidies have to be acquired directly through the landlords who's participating. Project-based housing and vouchers are addressed directly through the housing authority, and continuum of care addresses similar line items that are federally funded, but they need to be addressed at assessment locations. Now, all these, that opens a much wider idea of how you could approach this depending on how much time you have. And it could also, some of these programs may work or not work depending on incomes. And, a lot of you guys have all different circumstances. So it's not a one size fits all thing. In fact, everybody contacts me or my office about the subject matter, vouchers and subsidies and COC. Until we have a whole casework profile, there's probably over 100 programs and vouchers and subsidy types out there that could be considered. But since people's lives are so complex, the only way you can determine and eliminate and keep only the good ones is really by doing casework clients. Okay. But do keep in mind, I'm not here to sell anybody anything. This is just an open topic to address questions. All right. Sally Richards, hello and good afternoon. Chrissy, thank you. Abana, hello from Virginia. Good to hear from you folks out there in Virginia. Faith in Motion, calling out from Cali or California. Been there, used to live in San Fran. Annie M. Parent, hello and good afternoon. Hot Sugar, emergency housing voucher, hardly help. Well, the level of help that anything offers depends on how much you're already in it. Let's admit it, let's be honest. Sometimes circumstances, when you land in them, you end up losing everything. It's hard to climb out of a deep hole. We have to keep a different perspective. It may not feel like much is happening in terms of getting emergency housing, much other things, but sometimes we have to dig clients out of holes, because you're so far into it. It only takes a moment for a cop to show up with an eviction notice, put you and your furniture on the sidewalk. It could take me up to 8 months or even a year to undo what's happened there. And that's not including financial complications, loss of property, and probably a devastation to your mental health. So it only takes moments to ruin a life, but it takes quite a while to kind of recover from that and get a clear plan in place for those that have suffered a very serious incident where their life came apart. I've seen a lot of that through the pandemic. All right. Mary, do these programs allow shared housing? I have 6-bedroom house. When you say shared housing, could you tell me a little bit more what you mean by that? Do you mean you own the home and you're going to rent out different rooms to different people, like a boarding house? Could you tell me a little bit more, Mary? Roselle Campbell goes on to say, Columbus, Ohio doesn't have real housing. The company is called CGI, and I want to port out of Columbus to South Carolina, but I'm scared. Ms. Campbell, if you want to take the mystery out of things and mitigate risk through the process, then I would say reach out to any consultant. It ain't going to be my office, but I would reach out to somebody that understands the process, has been through it thousands, if not tens of thousands of times with clients. That way you're not going to learn the hard way, and you're not going to be wandering around trying to figure this out as you go. Portability can be a gamble if you don't know what you're doing, and I don't expect anybody here to know. I didn't even get good at my job till 10 years in. And even then, many of my clients were test dummies. In other words, what would work yet a year ago wouldn't work, next year. Things change quickly in rules and policies and programs. Hell, just since 2000, Section 8 in its programs and HUD have changed the rules about 6 different times. Over a 50-year course, You know, this isn't even what it was in the 80s. It keeps changing, and now it's changing at a more rapid pace. And so, even if you're a consultant, and this election season coming up next year around February, they'll change it all again. So I got to sit down and read more big old yellow phone books and try to figure out what I can pull from that, what's changed, and can we still be effective if we work with clients? So it's a lot like lawyers and doctors learning, reading up on the newest stuff. It's the same in my office, trying to keep ahead of the wave, because when you don't keep ahead, you become ineffective and you can no longer demonstrate a certain standard. All right. So Aubrey Jones, by the way, guys, I can be repetitive in words, but that's my way of bridging my thoughts. If you don't like hearing so, or there are other repetitive words that I might use, just pull the power cord. Visit somewhere else. Okay. I don't want anybody to be troubled. I don't want to cause anybody to have a psychiatric moment. We all have our flaws. So I'm heading it off, letting you know now. Sometimes do that, especially when I'm tired. I had to juice up on coffee just to get in this video. All right. Audrey Jones, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday back to you. Sheila Neal, hello. Question. I applied last year for the Georgia housing. I received a letter recently from Walton PH, or Public Housing Authority. Is that a project housing? I'd have to look it up, to be honest with you. There are roughly 4,400 housing authorities in America, and I'm good, but I'm not that good. Since I don't necessarily know that specific county, I can't tell you right now. Mary goes on to say renting rooms separately. So in terms of that, that's called SRO, single room occupancy. And yes, you could accept vouchers for different rooms, so long as it meets guidelines. And that can be vastly different from place to place. So I would advise reaching out to the local Public Housing Authority, PHA, and reach out to one of their caseworkers or managers and ask them if it's possible to accept vouchers for different rooms. Again, that may change place to place. Sheila Neal says, thank you, with a smiley. I'm going to take a sip of coffee, guys. All right, MGM. What can you do if your local housing authority is a bit incompetent on some issues? Can you bypass them and deal directly with a regional office? Well, to be honest with you, I find that at least 3 federal agencies address many of the issues at the federal level. Okay. So you have OIG, Office Inspector General for Professional Misconduct, badly behaved housing authorities, and other issues related to landlords. You have HUD itself, which has a broad reach across discrimination, harassment, and other issues related to relationships from the housing authority to you, or from you back to the landlord. So that's a potential. And OIG slash, here we go, another gap in the brain. OIG slash, God, I sometimes question myself for making these videos so late in the day. OIG. Well, when I think of it, I'll come right on back to it. So there are 3 federal agencies that address it. Also, at the state and local level, they may have a different county, state, and other ordinances in place, like rent control laws. They could have source of income laws. So there's lots at the local level. To be frank with you, it would be exploratory. In other words, we'd have to discover just what could be used. And of course, I do not know the circumstances of really what's happening, and nor would I want you to disclose in a live video in front of people from all over the world. All right, moving on from there. Lloyd Torres, where can we find guidelines for different programs? Well, hell, I've got many videos that cover it extensively, but Lloyd, you can find a lot of programs and rules, policies, and code of federal regulation on Title 24, and there are many, many more manuals. I'll tell you what, Mr. Torres, what I'm going to do is the next video that comes out, which will likely be Tuesday or Wednesday, around 10 in the morning, I'm going to make a video specifically about policies, procedures, data manuals, Title 24, and all other operable rules that go into this. Do keep in mind that every housing authority has its own policies and procedures. I can't open up that can of worms for you, because that would be thousands, tens of thousands of manuals. But do make note, Mr. Torres, if you look up the name NAN, N-A-N, and McKay, M-C-K-A-Y, I believe, they are the guys that that all the housing authorities don't want you to know about. Ned and McKay are the people that write all the manuals for most of the housing authorities in America. Now, here's the catch. In the old days, you could go on their website and get them free. Now they charge big money for that. I know that because I've forked out plenty. But think of them as kind of the keys of the kingdom, at least for housing authorities and their rules and policies. But there are many, many, many rules and policies and manuals out there. It really depends. So I would say you would want to narrow down what it is you want to know to afford you a better answer from me. Or you could reach out to my office for a consult, and I can easily probably direct you in the right direction. I get a lawyer probably every week, sometimes two, and we do a lot of work for those guys because they enjoy making good money. And when there's a lot of federal code involved, they often do retainer agreements with my office, and I do the work for them. That way they can go on and fight their court case. So as long as you're concise in what you're looking for, that can probably lead you in the right direction, because up here is a big old law library along with the policies, procedures, and codes and all that. All right, moving on. So we got Laura. I'm trying to port from Columbus, Ohio to San Fran. Is it next to impossible to see which HA is absorbing? Well, no, you know what? Housing authorities will battle you on information for just about everything, but portability is not considered the golden egg. So I think that reaching out to them or even sending their portability specialist a letter, will make sure you certify it, obviously, with a tracking number, and just request. They should just tell you, okay? It's not one of the things it's not a closely guarded secret like many of the things they do. Another sip of coffee. Boy, the questions are really rolling out. Now that y'all have established I'm not full of shit and I actually know what I'm talking about, a lot of you are asking real questions. So I certainly appreciate that. This would have been a lot easier had y'all just started the conversation that way. We could have gone past the pleasantries. All right. Thrift the Runway. I like that name. It's different. I'd love to know the story on that. Is there a way to see guidelines for income eligible programs overall, not just Section 8? Well, the government does a fabulous job of lots of things, including keeping highly accurate AI and records for bombs and countries and interrogations. But when it comes to the whole HUD, we probably are still working on the first computers ever invented, or still tabulating that. So unfortunately, when it comes to solid record keeping across programs and stuff that you're asking for, that is very antiquated and may not exist. So you would really want to focus. You would want to narrow your focus down very finely, and then I might be able to find the data you're looking for. All right, Miss Peanut says, and I like that name. Why haven't I received the voucher? I've been deemed eligible since 3/23. How can I get it? DeBall County, Jackson. Well, Miss Peanut, I think that you're learning what every prize winner is learning. Once you apply, you wait till you die. I mean that only in a joking way. Look, housing authorities will let 1 million people sign up. They only have an intention of giving a handful of people vouchers, really, and you can wait anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of decades. So that's hard to say, Miss Peanut. But the good news is it really does depend on what you put in that application and whether or not they view you, your family composition, the answers you've given as a priority, and if they meet the local preference and how they're funding, then they'll likely do it. So it's hard to give you a solid answer on that, but I can tell you that it takes a bit of time. Even when my office works cases to help people navigate the system and get vouchers, it usually takes me 4 to 8 months to get through that. Okay. The average human that's wandering around YouTube videos and Google, you guys tend to go through pain and misery for a couple of years before you give my office a call. So I tell you right now, it takes a little while. All right. Lloyd Torres, thank you very much. Well, you're most welcome. Miss Peanut goes on to say, she's becoming popular here. What's the difference between Section 8 income-based and subsidized housing? Really nothing. I think, Peanut, you really want to narrow your focus to one thing. Whether it's a voucher, a subsidy, or any other way, you're being subsidized 70%, and you have a 30% responsibility of your income to pay in rent. So all these programs, no matter what it is, housing authorities covering 70, you're covering 30% unless you have an extremely high income, and that really is the definitive answer in that respect. But there are no parallels between cost and calculation. Calculation for many PHAs are run through algorithms, third-party companies, and sometimes extensive manuals. I know we recently had a law firm reach out to me, and they were hoping to get me for a low price to do calculations. I cannot stand that stuff. I'd rather watch the paint melt on the wall, and I don't know, man. I'd rather dig a ditch. All right, carried away. Thank you for being a member of the channel. By the way, guys, I sell memberships. I don't sell them. YouTube does. If you like good information, housing, sometimes spicy videos, a little bit of personality, sometimes attitude, with a mixture of a few profanities here and there, we sell, YouTube sells memberships for our channel for as little as $1.99. And they take half of it, of course. So they indenture me. They take half and they give me the change. But if you enjoy our content and you find any information we sell here useful, sign up. We use that money to purchase treats, cat food, and different things for the cats that I rescue. And yes, I keep all my cats. I don't sell them. You'll see them in my videos. Many of my videos, you see them. In fact, my beautiful chair here, you see those little spots on the chair? I didn't pick this up at a garage sale. That's the cats sitting up there, purring and sinking their claws. They have now destroyed 2 chairs. I even had somebody accuse me in a live video of having a trashy chair, and I'm like, you know what? You don't know nothing. These are my cats. They like tear things up, and that's the cost of business. I can love the cat or I can love the chair. I'd rather have the cat. All right, moving on from there. Audrey Jones says, and thank you for taking my case. Absolutely. Miss Peanut, last year, March 2023, and she says, thank you. Well, I appreciate hearing that, Miss Peanut. Thrift the Runway, thank you for sharing your perspectives and help for people versus the unusual rigmarole. You know, I always wonder how that word was spelt, and you have solved that for me. Rigmarole. Hot Sugar. I got to tell you, man, Hot Sugar, I love that name, and I've only seen that name come through the channel twice in different spellings. It's just fun. It's so interesting to hear. All right, so Hot Sugar says Section 8 is voucher to move from state to state, and HUD is state-based. You can move to each state. Okay, let's make a few clarifications here, guys. We're making lots of associations between HUD, Section 8, and so on. Let's clarify what all these real terms actually mean, because most of you guys are confusing things. Besides Congress creating the federal budget, which gives that money to a federal agency called HUD, which is the Department of Urban Development and Indian Affairs, because it was originally designed for Indians, not us. They receive funds, and they also have another dual job, and that's to protect the interests of people when housing authorities do badly. When you get a voucher from a housing authority, that is not HUD. The housing authorities are either owned by the city or owned by private corporations or entities. They administrate vouchers. When they do a bad job, HUD steps in, sues them, and all kinds of things. So do make that distinction, okay? Moving on from there, Sheila Neal, make sure thumbs up, everyone. I certainly appreciate that. Guys, look, there's 93 people watching right now. Now's the time to ask those questions, and I'm going to give you guys another opportunity Tuesday, because we're going to go through. Dealing with housing authorities. A lot of you believe that you're indentured to the worker in the housing authority and whatever it tells you to do. Be a good little girl. Be a good little boy. You don't have to. Okay. Knowledge is a power in the system to understand what your rights are. And what I'm going to do is show y'all Tuesday everything that they prefer you didn't have. That means that your eyes have been opened. You're no longer walking around with a missing flip-flop. You're no longer begging and in fear that if you sass the caseworker, you get put out. We're going to rectify that by arming you with all their manuals. Now, I can't arm you with every PHA in America, but I can apprise you of enough federal policies and rules where you can begin to build your cases, understand what your rights are. If you do that, it's going to give you a lot more latitude in being able to navigate the system. Because in the end, you need to be able to do this and manage it on your own. Even if somebody hired me to do casework and get a voucher and so on, it doesn't mean I'm going to be there to hold their hand through the next 20 years of them having that voucher. And it won't be the first or last time the worker talks to you badly or does something that may violate federal rules, state rules, and so on. Many housing authorities have many problems. In the past 12 months, we've watched housing authorities steal voucher money, go insolvent, burn up all the money. We've had at least 4 or 5 housing authorities where the feds have stormed the door and indicted everybody in the building. Does that mean that you should believe that the housing authority has your best interest in mind? You need to be in control of you. You need to be in control and understand what's happening in your case at your housing authority, and not be dictated like you're a little girl buying an ice cream from an ice cream shop. That's the thing here. To understand your rights and to remain in control of your case. If you walk through this process as a victim, thinking like a victim because you don't know anything, then that's how you're gonna get handled. Okay. Housing authorities have notorious relationships, both good and bad. I would estimate that roughly 20% of them operate ethically and they do a great job. The other 80%, you'd have a better chance of getting a voucher and advice from a prostitute on 3rd Street. Okay, let's just be honest. Many of you, are laughing and think, oh, this guy's crazy for even saying that. You give that local housing authority a call and start asking a bunch of questions and see how fast that conversation goes dark. Okay, I've had many people go, oh, well, I laughed when I heard that until I actually called them. And then they talked to me like they were letting me out of prison cell. You'll see, and then you'll be back. So Tuesday is all about manuals, time to read. For those of you that are suffering, and I want to make something very distinctly clear. Just because you have a disability, whether it be schizophrenia, bipolar, can't walk, hearing, seeing, thinking problems, you've got electronic emissions and you can't have cell phones and electronics around. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to view you as crazy and that you're incapable of being able to fight for yourself. I work with all kinds of people. Okay. I work with people that nobody else wants to deal with because I don't judge. My job as a consultant is to empathize with the client and try to meet them in the middle so they're able to have some respect and dignity. If you cannot get that through this process, then you're either don't know your rights, you're dealing with a bad consultant, or you just phoned your local housing authority. Okay. Don't let those people handle you. You know how many times housing authorities have been sued? All right, so let's get back to the questions here. Another sip of coffee. I'm drying out here. Preaching about rights. Who needs those, right? We'll just let the government tell us what to do, how to act, when to breathe, right? Aren't we all in for that? Matter of fact, if that's your way of thinking, then why even apply for a voucher? Just go ahead and move on down the plantation, and you can go out there and do what everybody else does. Just be told what to do, like the county jail. I don't think any of you should do that. I think you should get in there to get what you need, graduate your voucher to the HUD homeownership program, and then move on with your life. Take control of this. Don't walk through it like a victim. I don't want y'all doing that. Why do I bring up plantations? I'm from Louisiana, and obviously that actually has a bad history, but I don't mean it in that context. What I mean is a whole context of being victimized, and injured. And that's what a lot of this process will do if you don't know what you're doing. Sandy Smith, you skip over my question. Miss Smith, I never skip on anybody's question. In fact, the question you're posing now is the only one I see on my screen. I don't engage in bigotry, racism, or skipping of questions, okay? It'd be easier to say, excuse me, did you see my last question than to make an accusation against me. I'm not skipping you, dear. I don't do that. Now, occasionally I might miss it if there's a lot of people commenting, but I haven't. Why would I make a Q&A video and then just skip a person? You'll be fine. Ask again. Maybe it didn't come through YouTube. Maybe YouTube retracted it. A lot of you guys think I'm sitting here with a mouse and I'm picking and choosing. I'm not. I see what you guys see, and sometimes it doesn't show. All right, listening up democracy. I am in the process of applying for disability. Should I put myself on some waiting list now? Or, well, disability is a process, and that process can last anywhere from months to a couple of years. I would advise that you begin that process because the process can be long. There's many unknowns with your circumstances as well. You could be in a big metropolitan area. You could be in a small town in Alaska. I don't know. But I know one thing, waiting the last minute to apply for any type of voucher is a terrible idea. It's a long process. It requires knowing a lot. A lot of you guys, you can run down there and pull out an application, but that's not all there is to this if you want to get it quicker. Okay? If you don't want to wait decades, then you need to know a lot more than what you're being told. Share the light. Yeah, they can cut the conversation short real quick. Yep, you're right. And let me tell you something that's interesting you may not know. Your public housing authority is funded to determine to offer an application, have you fill it out, and the qualifying. They're not there to consult you, answer your questions, or anything else, and they do a fabulous job of doing that. Right? I think they actually purchase a phone line. They purchase a cheap phone from the dollar store, and then they drop it in the toilet. They either don't answer it. They pretend like everybody's got COVID. When you come to the door, they put a tiny crack and they kind of breathe through a mask and tell you that you can't come in. All kinds of excuses. That's what happens when we want to take federal dollars and don't want to do a fucking job. We watched plenty of that during the pandemic. The housing authorities used as an excuse to celebrate, pop champagne, and not do shit because they could sit in their house, watch Netflix all day, and had the perfect excuse to keep people from applying and doing anything, which caused a big problem throughout the U.S. And it still does. I'm still here. I still call housing authorities myself, and they still got this message on their machine due to pandemic. Wait times may be forever, and we may or may not even answer. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Needs to be investigated. All right, so Angela Kaufman, would it be best to find a main building in your state for HUD than going to the housing authority? Well, HUD does not handle vouchers, okay? They just handle the funding, and that funding they disperse to all the housing authorities in every county in the state. So you've got to go through the housing authorities throughout each and every county in the state that has one. There is a federal list of that, which you can get. Share the Light goes on to say the housing authorities are really bad and extremely unprofessional and so rude. The context of what this person is suggesting there is true in many, many cases, but I do want to bear in mind there are many good housing authorities I've met. But in order to access this kind of housing authorities, you're ultimately going to find them in areas of town where there's lots of money. So it goes along the oldest game on the planet. The more you got, the nicer they are. The less the neighborhood has, the worse they get. It's like an attitude and mentality blended all into a hellish mix. Listen Up Democracy says, thank you. I appreciate it. So many thank yous today. I tell you what, guys, I really appreciate hearing that. You don't know how many cases I take on a year where people get what they want and I never hear from them again. They don't even thank me. I mean, literally dragged their ass off the street, kept them from dying in a shelter, and bam, hang up the phone, they're gone. No thank you, go to hell, nothing. It just blows my mind. You'd think I was selling toasters. And there was no reason to be thankful. So I appreciate all the thank yous in the video today. Shed Light says, in Atlanta. Atlanta's a great place. I used to go out there to Stone Mountain out there. Monarch Butterfly, another interesting name that I like. With HUD, Homeownership Program, do they help you with repairs for your homes? Well, the interesting thing about HUD Homeownership Program, they're not really going to allow you to get involved in the purchase of a home that's going to require any types of repairs, because one thing I want to ensure is things are already highly difficult for those that have vouchers that want to participate in that program. So the last thing they're going to allow is for you to purchase a fixer-up home, okay? And that's because they understand you would likely have a more difficult time than the average person. So I think that it kind of answers that question there. And I would recommend looking at Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac, because whenever young couples buy homes and discover they lost their job, those houses go up for auction and become part of the federal system on occasion. And you can buy a HUD home, as we've all heard. And a lot of those homes are in very good condition. Michelle Bancroft, when one receives a voucher, is there a specific amount of rent given to find a place? So, that's called, the voucher is actually called a request for tenancy. And every housing authority, at least the good ones, the ones that have enough budget to have an IT department, which is very few, they'll put up their what they call a rent and payment standards. So if you have a payment standard given for landlords and they show you the minimum and maximums they're willing to pay for an apartment in a zip code, you can also presume that your voucher will likely be within that. So you can look at payment standard, but if you really want to know, you'll be qualified based on your income. And that's not an easy thing to answer because it's going to be different for nearly every zip code in America. So we got to be really on target as far as where you're going before you can get that up there. But for most cases, they're going to issue a voucher that will likely cover your portion, 70% of what they're willing to pay. So it's going to be comparable to the market. Comparable means that whatever voucher they issue is going to be very similar to all the other rents that are in a half-mile radius, provided you don't have some rich folks in one house and then and a bunch of other folks that may be in houses that are not new. Okay. All right. Tracy Lynn, thank you. Special thanks for all you do. Well, thank you, Miss Lynn. I appreciate hearing that from you today, and for all of you that have thanked me. The best way, guys, to thank me is to get out there, to get understand this system. Don't allow people to victimize you. That housing authority. Get your housing. Take care of your family, your children, your disabled, your veterans. That's the best way to thank me, is to learn and to weaponize and use this information to get out there and and live the best life you can. Okay, I know having a voucher isn't a dream, but it's the first step towards either getting even and level and stable. And so for a lot of you, that means a lot. For many of us that may go on to retirement, it may be all that we have left. So, look, stability can be sanity. It may feel like surviving, but it can be sanity because nobody wants to live in the streets. Shirley Griffin, excellent information. Sharing posts immediately. I certainly appreciate that, Miss Griffin. Well, guys, I've enjoyed this. I really, really want all of y'all that are serious, those that have the capacity to go to read manuals and others. I want to share everything I've got, everything on my books in terms of manuals, and I'll be able to give you federal data, policies, procedures, data manuals, all that. Okay. Now I can't give it to you for every PHA. There's too many, 4,400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to laser focus on the points where I believe that you guys can best use the information. Nobody wants to sit there and read 25 telephone books to get to one point. So I'm going to try to condense information into specific types of manuals that I know would address the answer for you guys without getting a super elaborate question. In other words, there's your talk, then there's very similar languages, like you're hanging out in court and the lawyer and the judge is talking and you can't understand what the hell they're talking about. So what I'm going to do is release information I know you guys can easily interpret and actually use. And then we're going to get rid of all the fluff. Look, out of 1 million words read, only about 5% of it actually does enough to do it. In other words, if I cut all the fat out the federal system under rules and policies, only about 5% of it's actually useful. So that's what I'm trying to deliver Tuesday, is all the different types of manuals. So we're going to have a massive linkage for that video, and then we're going to go through explanations. And again, don't feel ashamed if you have memory problems and other issues that prevent you from being able to learn and or remember, okay? That information will be as a matter of public record at the bottom of the video, and you'll be able to access it any time at your own pace, okay? So I don't want anybody to feel they're exempted from this. It's there. Maybe you have a loved one that can work with you, because I have a lot of clients have memory and other issues that prevent a linear form of learning, okay, especially ADD and other issues that people can have. So I want to address that. We can't simply take everybody with disabilities and throw them in the trash and not give them anything, okay? This is not a slave market, you know. So in order to do that, I'm going to get a permanent record in the video for you guys and give out that information. Let's see. BT, hi. I am new here and would love to find out more information. Also need help with my housing authority. Okay, BT. I'm going to provide some information in the description of the video, as well as the comment section there. If you guys want to reach out to me concerning issues you may have, I'm at www.section8consulting.com. You can look at my reputation. It's pretty stellar, pretty good. Look at my background and see what we do, our website. The videos here as a way to engage and teach, okay? Sometimes preach. The website's there as a professional courtesy for those that need further assistance. So guys, if you've gone out and you have done every reasonable method to try to help yourself, and you're still wandering in the dark and no result has been yielded for you, and there's no end in sight, that then and only then would be a good time to consider using a company or myself to help you through a process or navigate the system, okay? I'm not here to sell anybody anything. That's there exclusively for those that need the extra. All right, moving on from there, Donna Rigsby, can you train us to help others the way you do? I can to a certain degree, but keep in mind, now I'm an actual real consultant. For every one of me, there's 100 entertainers on YouTube, okay? They'll try to mimic things I do on my channel. There are certain things I can't teach you guys on here because they'll take that and commit massive fraud on YouTube. So in many ways, I can teach y'all to do many things, about 97%, but 3% of it's what I consider to be proprietary. In other words, I'm not going to weaponize scam artists all over YouTube, and there's lots of them. Virtually nearly 99.9% of all the people that make videos related to Section 8, they're not consultants. They're not even party clowns. I'm not sure what they are. It's easy. You can thumb through their videos and you can see very quickly they don't know anything. They're just giving loose advice after reading one article on YouTube or on Google, and they're giving out information that could potentially damage somebody's life. So there's a distinction between being a consultant and an entertainer. I'm not an entertainer. All right, Jim Bennett, over 100 and watching. Are you 100 years and older and you're still watching, or have 100 videos? You got to tell me, Mr. Bennett. If you're over 100, then congratulations, brother. We've certainly been served well by having you here on Earth. BT, thank you for everything you do. You're efficient and straightforward. You know, I am probably so straightforward in some of my videos that it's to my detriment, but that's okay. We're all allowed to have flaws, aren't we? Carolyn Grayer, I like that name. Thank you for all your information. Section 8, I have Section 8. I need to move because the place I live in is not safe. You know what we're also going to do this week? You guys have hit me so hard for portability. I think besides the manuals Tuesday, on Thursday, we're going to do portabilities and moves. I'm going to teach you some of the nicest tricks that I know in the trade to help you navigate and mitigate risk on portability and how to deal with these absurdly rude and ugly housing authorities that don't want to cooperate in that process. So I'll walk you through that and show you what your rights are, and probably save 90% of your energy once you learn how to do that efficiently, okay? So Tuesday, around 10-ish Central Standard Time, we're going to do manuals, procedures, and policies on the link of a massive database. Thursday, we're going to talk all about portability. The main thing, I'm going to do less talking, but I'm going to do teaching. That way you actually have a game plan to mitigate risk and get through that process. And that means you don't have to hang on every word the housing authority worker lies to you about. I find their information they tend to give out is very selective. In some cases, can damage you in the process of doing that, because the way they view it is don't let the door hit you on the ass. And by the time you arrive in New City, you won't even know they just screwed you over that. So I'm going to show you how to not, and I hate to be so broad, but how not to get burnt on that deal. The housing authority has one interest only. It earns money. Number two, it makes determinations whether you receive a voucher. And number three, they don't get paid to give a damn about you, okay? So don't ever think that these people have their best interests in mind. That's how you know you're going to be a victim. Anytime you're going to have to depend on the housing authority to teach you anything, then you might as well go ahead and drive your car up a bridge. Pamela Williams, do your research before you move places. Do not know about the property apartment. This will help safeguard. That's one of many sound pieces of advice I'm going to be giving out Thursday. BTM was approved for reasonable accommodation and yet to hear from my housing authority on said move within development. Now, accommodations and modifications under Chapter 24 is the most complex matter of all things Section 8. We may be addressing that one, but it's so complex that a lot of that work, I'll put it to you this way. You have to have a really fine understanding of rules and policies, okay? Besides that, it would also require the caseworker actually having a good understanding of their own policies, and many of them don't. In other words, you get denied because of their own ignorance. And so you need to understand how to deal with combination modifications when they're violating rules, and many of them don't know. You guys think that everybody works at the housing authority has a master's degree or a PhD, and they've read all their manuals and policies. Half these people, the average term for a housing authority is 60 days. That's how long people last. I would estimate that only one, maybe two or three in a whole building are actually know a quarter of what I know. And so don't think for a minute that when you're posing questions to PHA workers, public housing authority, and people that just left from serving you a cheeseburger through the drive-through window at McDonald's are now your caseworker, okay? This is the same little girl and boy that picked up their kindergarten certificate at the bubblegum machine. They're now your caseworker. Now, he or she can't be bothered to read every manual in the door, so they give you arbitrary answer because you don't know any better. But if we empower you by understanding the rules and what's required in the federal law, that means it doesn't matter what that worker says. We can step it up to the federal level, and that means you can force or compel. In other words, either do your job or it ends. Okay, so there's lots of ways to manhandle a housing authority. And I'm not suggesting that's the method we need to approach here, is throwing everybody on the bus. But let's be honest. Don't take on a job dealing with housing. It's such a serious matter and believe this is some part-time job working at the dollar store. But yet that's much of what's happening here. Not to offend anybody working at the dollar store, okay? I'm just saying. Why are we hiring the meanest, ugliest, the nastiest to be PHA workers that don't give a damn, dealing with one of the most serious things out there? Do you think we would hire these same people to make nuclear bombs? So we have a real problem in the nation. We have a moral, ethical, we have lots of problems, people. All right, before I go on preaching, let's go ahead and close this out. And my throat's about to dry out. Bella Cruz, my landlord failed to provide reasonable accommodation. I'm not going to get accommodations today, guys. We could go on for a good 52-hour video. I'd pass out trying to tell you just 10%. Thrift the runway. How much one's expenses need to be disclosed when applying? There's no way I can answer all that right now. I tell you what, guys, we'll address separate issues and separate videos. I'm going to go ahead and close this out because now we're on like third comments from some of you. We're going to roll out videos all the way through the holidays, and I'm going to try to address the most important ones as I can. What I can't do is type out or talk for 2 hours one subject matter. There are some things inside of Section 8 that even if I talk for 20, 30 hours straight, I'd only be scratching the surface. Many of you don't understand that it comes down to what you personally have going on, your personal circumstances, that I understood those circumstances well, and also the policies that are in place in order to address them. That's what casework's really for, because without that information, then you're asking me to be the weatherman. In other words, you're posing a question, open-ended question, and I'm supposed to give sound professional advice based on virtually nothing. It doesn't work that way. They're not quick shot answers through the system. Wherever I can give a quick answer, I certainly will. Nobody wants to go carry on all day. But for now, the best way to do this is to group them into videos 3 times a week till we work through it. That's the best I can offer you guys. Okay. I hope you understand. I love you all, and I hope to see you Tuesday and Thursday. And, keep the videos, rewind them, take the gold nuggets out of it that you need. I realize that everything I talk about is going to be worthy to you. Take what you need to fix you and your family. All right, guys. Best wishes. See you Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.